exhibit that I marked as Exhibit U was not the handwritten list that you saw on June 27th or 28th. Is that correct?
No, I've never seen that before.
But you did see a list in Dr. Laus's handwriting on June 27th or 28th. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that list has since been shredded, hasn't it?
Yes.
Now, you began to call the people whose names and telephone numbers appeared on that list on Monday, July 1st, didn't you?
Yes.
And you told Dr. Laus that you were going to begin doing that, didn't you?
Yes.
And he told you, good, go ahead. Isn't that correct?
Yeah.
And you called all of the individuals whose names were handwritten on that list?
Yes.
And did you call them and tell them about the new location of Dr. Laus's office?
Yes.
And if they weren't home, did you leave a message if you could?
Yes.
Okay. And did the message indicate that Dr. Laus had a new office, location, and contact information?
I just said, this is Amy. I'm calling to give you the phone number and address to the new office.
And so anybody you either talked to or anybody you were able to leave a message for, you gave them that information. Is that
Yes.
correct? Now, besides the handwritten list that Dr. Laus prepared, was there also a typewritten list?
Yes.
Let me show you Exhibit B and ask you if you've ever seen that document before.
Yes.
And what is Exhibit B?
It's a typed up list with patients on it. Some of it is handwriting notes for me that doesn't make any sense to me right now. And that is it.
Okay. And how did you come to have Exhibit B?
It was in the same folder.
It was in the same folder. And do you assume that that was prepared by Dr. Laus?
I don't know who it was prepared by.
But that was your assumption, wasn't it?
I don't know who it was prepared by.
Okay.
It was prepared by someone.
Okay.
I'm sure that it was Dr. Laus.
Okay. And did you begin to make telephone calls to the people whose numbers appear on Exhibit B as you had to the handwritten list, which has been shredded?
Yes.
We'll offer Exhibit B into evidence.
No objection.
D, is it?
B is a picture.
You hasn't.
Okay.
Now, there are crosses through names. Do you see those crosses?
Yes.
Are those yours?
Yes.
What, if anything, do those crosses indicate?
That means that I contacted the patient and they wanted to schedule with us.
And then there's also some lettering. And it looks to me like it's an LMTSCB. You see that?
Yes.
And what does that lettering mean?
Left message to call back.
And did you give the individuals who you left that message to call back the information about the telephone number of the new practice?
And the address.
Okay. Now, there are quite a few names on this document. Did you engage in some sort of triage with regard to who to call or what priority to give to calling those patients?
There's some patients that are very severe, and I called them first.
Okay, so you could tell, based upon your knowledge, training, background, and experience with medical specialists or with Franciscan medical specialists, when you looked at those names, who had what condition?
It wasn't my training with medical specialists, it's the fact that I know my patients.
All right. And some patients were sicker than others.
Yes.
And so those were the patients who you gave priority to in making telephone calls. Is that correct?
Yes. If they're sick, they need to be seen.
And so those were the patients that you first tried to contact?
Yes.
approximately how far are you through your lists that you found on the 27th or the 28th of June?
You have it right here. The only people that I haven't talked to again are the people that say left message to call back to see if they even called back.
Did you have any conversations with Dr. Laus after that first conversation where you said that you were going to start making telephone calls?
No, he honestly didn't know when I was even calling them.
He knew you were making the calls, but he didn't know when in the course of the business day you were taking time to do that. Is that
Yes.
correct? And then do you handle the calls when the patients call and schedule for an appointment?
Not all of them. It depends on if they hit my line or not.
So that a patient who you contacted could have called you and scheduled an appointment with you as well. Is that correct?
Yes, I would schedule them if they called needing to be scheduled.
And then would you be responsible for putting a record or some sort of a document together for the patient call, for the patient visit?
Like as far as new patient paperwork? Yes, for the visits I would get all the paperwork together, any records needed, same way that I would do it anywhere else.
And did that include information from medical specialists or Franciscan medical specialists?
No, I don't need any information from them. I know my patients. I know 90% of my patients.
So that's all based upon your knowledge of the patients that were seen before you went to work for Pulmonary and Allergy Associates
Yes.
on the 20th.
If you ask me a person on this list what they have wrong with them, I can tell you what that is.
That's all the questions I have.
Cross-exam?
Roger, before I ask any questions, I want to make sure that the information contained in Exhibit B, we did put green covers on these, because these materials are covered pursuant to the protective order. There is personal information of medical patients on here, names and telephone numbers anyway. Okay, just want to make sure that's clear for the record.
Okay.
Ma'am, did you, under what circumstances did you shred the parts of this list that were still handwritten as opposed to being typed?
If everybody was contacted, I didn't feel the need that we needed to keep it. The same way I would shred any other patient documentation that is no longer needed.
Did Dr. Leos ask, order, or otherwise command you to shred that document?
No, he didn't even know I was shredding them.
Is it your understanding that the typewritten list came off of a handwritten list that Dr. Leos had, and once he typed them, he got rid of them?
I don't know.
You never shredded this list?
No.
The circumstances under which you left the Franciscan medical specialist in late June of 2013, can you describe those for me, please?
I didn't leave because Franciscan bought them. I left there because of the way that it was being ran. The department was being ran ridiculously. Jackie had put a new lady in charge of us. It was even before we had heard that Franciscan was buying them, who would have us working with 3 doctors at a time. Some doctors that are high maintenance. Dr. Stoker is a very high maintenance doctor. They would put me by myself with him when he normally requires 2 doctors, or two assistants to work with them. Then you have to go into the afternoon to a busy day with Dr. Leos, and I'm working with 20 patients with him and whatever patients Dr. Stoker had, plus having to go sit in the chair and talk to the patients afterwards where he tells me the same thing that he just told them. It was just getting to be way too much. Absolutely way too much. Way too much stuff was demanded from you. And when you did go talk to Jackie, she would say, there's a reason why you're getting extra work, because you can handle it. And I don't think that was fair, because why should I have to be, number one, I trained every single person in the pulmonary department that is there right now, besides the new people they've hired in. Why should I have to be doing extra work, making the same to less money than the people that I'm training and getting no reward for it, not even a good job, just saying, well, you're doing this because you can, not Superman.
Okay. So suffice it to say that you were dissatisfied with your working conditions.
Yes.
And did you seek out Dr. Leos to ask if you could have a job, or did he seek you out and offer you a job?
I asked Dr. Leos if I could work with him if he left.
And now you do.
Yes.
That's all I have.
Dr. Leos called you on your cell phone, did he?
Yes.
And at that time, he told you that if you wanted to work with him, that he would be more than happy to have you work for him. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that was approximately a week or so before you left your employment.
Yes.
Thank you, that's all.
Ma'am, under what circumstances was the first conversation you had with Dr. Leos about being able to come with him to his new practice?
I asked him if I would be able to go with him if he left.
And about when was that?
June?
June of this year.
Yes.
Is it the situation which you caught up with Dr. Leos in the parking lot of the medical specialist?
Yes.
He did not find you in the parking lot, you went to find him in the parking lot.
Dr. Leos never seeked me out to ask me to work with him. I asked him.
And the phone call was subsequent to you asking him if you could work?
Yes.
That's all.
Nothing.
Thank you, ma'am. You may step down.
Dawn Coronado.
Raise your right hand and be sworn. You solemnly swear to affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
Please be seated.
Good afternoon.
No,
It's been fun waiting all day?
no, not at all.
Can you tell us your name?
My name's Dawn Coronado,
Where do you live, Dawn?
Valparaiso.
And are you currently employed?
Yes.
By whom?
Pulmonology and Allergy Associates,
And where is Pulmonology and Allergy Associates located?
1650 45th Street, Munster, Indiana, 46321,
And how long have you worked for that organization?
since July 1st.
And who are the physicians that comprise Pulmonary and Allergy Associates?
Dr. Leos, Dr. Patel, and Dr. Sethi.
Before July 2013, were you employed
Yes.
by whom?
Medical specialist.
And how long did you have employment with medical specialists?
A little over 6 years.
Did you have a job title or designation?
Medical assistant in the pulmonary department.
Now, at some point after you became employed at Pulmonary and Allergy Associates, you received some patient schedules, is that correct?
Yes.
Let me show you what the court reporter has marked for identification as Exhibit W. And would you just silently take a look at that for a moment? And I'll ask you if you're familiar with that document.
Yes.
Okay, and tell me how you're familiar with that document.
This was the document I was given to call patients.
Okay. And who gave you that document?
Dr. Sethi?
And does that document constitute Dr. Sethi's schedule for days in the office at medical specialists at some time in the past before July 1st, 2013?
Yes.
We'll offer exhibit number W.
No objection.
Is W's admitted?
Now, was this a document that was generated on a form used back in the days when you worked at medical specialists?
Those are our printed schedules we were putting on our desk every morning before
Okay.
clinic.
And the printed schedule would tell you who was going to be seen that day?
Yes.
And they would identify the patient by name and by address and telephone number?
Yes.
And would they have an appointment time listed?
Yes.
And would they further identify the patient with regard to what basically was to happen or what was supposed to be done?
At that visit, yes.
Okay. So you would know, for instance, whether or not a patient had a new complaint, whether the patient was there for a recheck, whether the patient was there for a post-hospital discharge follow-up.
Right.
Now, when you were given Exhibit W by Dr. Sethi, were you told by him what it was he wished you to do?
Yes.
What did he wish you to do?
He asked me to call the patients and offer the new address and phone number to the facility and see if they needed a follow-up appointment with him. We're just basically giving the information out to the patients so they know where we were.
And did you make any marks or notations on Exhibit W?
Yeah, I could doodle a lot on there.
Okay, you were doodling. Now, for instance, there is the first patient for the visit on November 5th, 2012. You doodled that he's deceased.
Right?
Okay, I think that was a serious doodle.
Yes, there's other doodling on there.
Okay. And then you've got LMTC. What does that mean?
Left message to call.
Okay. And when you leave a message to call, what message would you leave?
That this is Dawn calling from Dr. Sethi's new office. We're just calling to give you the new address and phone number to the facility and to see if they needed a follow-up appointment, like I told everybody. And if they wanted to give us a call back, I gave them the phone number to give us a call back.
And as I look at this document, it appears that the number of pages comprise about 34 separate days. Do you see that?
So I'm going to count them?
Just take a look at the pages. I think they go from 22 to 56.
Oh, gotcha. Yes.
And each separate page represents another day of Dr. Sethi's schedule at medical specialists. Is that correct?
Right.
Beginning in the fall of 2012 and continuing on through to the spring of 2013. Is that correct?
Right.
Approximately how many of those patients had you call?
Maybe, I want to say about 100.
Okay.
A lot of them are duplicates because they have follow-up appointments. So
Sure. So you're not going to call the same patient twice.
Right.
But basically, most of the patients on the list you've called.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And have you reported periodically to Dr. Sethi about the progress that you're making?
Yes.
And what have you told him?
Well, he just asked how the list was going, and I said that I called, and a lot of patients I didn't get a hold of because I had to leave messages for them.
Okay. And have you reported to him about those that you have talked to?
Yes.
And have patients called who you've contacted and scheduled appointments?
Yeah,
And some haven't.
right.
Now, while you were still at medical specialists, did Dr. Sethi come up to you and Ms. Harnow in the parking lot, or Dr. Laos, rather, come up to you and Ms. Harnow in the parking lot and ask you if you two were looking for a job?
No.
Well, do you recall that Dr. Laos asked you if you two knew of any medical assistants who were looking for a job?
Yes. He asked everybody in the room.
And who else was in the room?
Brianna Rumpy and Trisha Molina.
And was this during the period of time that you remained employed at medical specialists?
Yes.
And do you know when that was in relationship to the time you left their employment?
When they brought that up, I'm thinking it's maybe, I don't know the exact dates, to be honest with you, but I was guessing the beginning of June when I did my deposition.
And did you know by the beginning of June that Dr. Laos was going to be leaving?
Yes.
And how did you learn that Dr. Laos was going to be leaving?
Because word spreads like wildfire at medical specialists.
Now, do you know if there were any mailings made to any of the patients?
No.
Did you provide any mailings to any of the patients based upon the daily schedules that you utilized?
Yes, the patients we couldn't get a hold of, we sent a letter to them.
All right. And what was the nature or the content of the letter?
From what I remember, it was just basically letting them know, the doctor was letting the patients know where he was, and that he's still practicing, and with the address and phone numbers to contact us if they'd like to.
And did one or several of the doctors sign the letter?
Just one,
And who signed the letter?
Dr. Sethi.
Okay. And did the letter go out on blank stationery, or was there some sort of a logo that was on the letterhead?
It was on our letterhead.
Right. And is there a letterhead for pulmonary and allergy associates?
Yes.
And does that indicate the address and the telephone number?
Yes.
And then that letter would have gone to people on the list that you referred to who you were not successful in talking to or contacting. Is that
Right.
correct? And that would go to the address that was also contained on the list, which was the daily patient schedule for medical specialists. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
That would go to the address that's indicated on the daily patient schedule for medical
Yes.
specialists. So, if I understand it correctly, the daily patient schedules from medical specialists were used to make telephone calls to those individuals. Is that correct?
Yes, the schedules actually don't have the patient's address on them.
So you'd have to go to some other document to get that.
Yes.
And where would that document come from?
I looked them up on the computer.
Okay. And did the computer contain information that you got from medical specialists?
No.
Well, how would you have an address of a patient in the computer?
By typing in the patient's name, I looked them up on the medical records for Epic on Community's website.
Okay, so you went back to the Community Epic site with the information you had about the name and the telephone number of the patient?
Yes.
And so you use the daily schedules to make telephone calls and also to make mailings. Is that correct?
Yes.
Was there a password that you needed to use?
Yes.
What was the password?
My own personal password.
And was that password provided to you by medical specialists?
No.
By whom?
By Community Hospital.
When?
July 1st.
Did you have a password for medical specialist prior to that time?
I did. And once we moved, we called and had them switched over.
Thank you, that's all.
Cross-examination?
Ms. Coronado, you stated, I think in response to some questions, that your employer was medical specialists up until in and around July 1st, 2013.
Right.
Is that true?
Yes.
What is FCCI?
Apparently that's who we are employed by. That's where we got our paychecks from. That's who we're printing out our paychecks.
So I'll ask you again, who was your employer up until July 1st?
FCCI.
Okay. You worked at a facility that had the name medical specialist outside the building,
Right.
right? Okay. At some point, did you become in and around or before December 31st of 2012 an employee of Franciscan Medical Specialists?
As of January 2013.
So your employment with FCCI then would have ended on December 31st, 2012.
Right.
It was also brought up, I think in response to a question, and perhaps inadvertently, if you can take a look at Exhibit W, it says, right in front of you there, it says it's an appointment schedule. I think you were asked for medical specialists. Does that say it's an appointment schedule for medical specialists?
No, it says
What
Franciscan Medical Specialist.
When you talk to patients or you call them on the telephone to inform them of the new location, did you provide them anything other than the information? Did you provide incentives to come, free visit, no copay?
No.
Did you provide them any other types of information that would be something you would consider salesmanship,
No.
coupons?
Just an address and phone number.
The appointment schedules for Franciscan medical specialists that are listed in Exhibit W or contained in Exhibit W. Was a copy of that on a daily basis provided to both you and to the doctor you were working for that day?
Yes.
Okay. Were you told by anyone at Franciscan medical specialists what to do with those lists at the end of the day?
No.
Were you told that they were to be placed in some bin to be shredded?
No.
Were you told or instructed that they had to stay on site?
No.
Ma'am, how did your employment change when you went from working for FCCI to becoming an employee of Franciscan Medical Specialists? Did your benefits change?
The benefits changed. I didn't sign on with the benefits for Franciscan. They did increase. I got married, so I got on my husband's medical benefits. Some of the policies and procedures changed. We had a point system after I came back. I had left for a short period of time.
Let's, so that these answers are clear, let's go through that.
Okay.
There was a time working for FCCI that you left and then came back. From when to when did you leave and then come back?
September of 2011, and I came back August of 2012.
Why?
I left because I was pregnant with my son, and I was going to be a stay-home mom, but I couldn't handle being a stay-home mom, so my boss, Jackie McLean, offered me my job back.
And when you came back, things were different. Is that fair to say?
Much different, yes.
Well, go ahead and describe what else was different.
Well, they had a point system. Was one of the things. And if you were late, you had a point. If you got this, you had a point. If you get 9 points, you get fired. They had there's a lot of more chiefs than Indians in the place. There's a lot of people running to telling you, and it's just, you're just not appreciated at the company anymore, not like they used to be. Everybody used to know everybody, and everyone would smile and talk to everybody, and then after a while, it was very uncomfortable working there. You're walking on pins and needles all the time. The job was always on the line. It's just not a very comfortable place to work for anymore.
And I think you stated that your health insurance benefit costs, had you not gone on your husband's insurance, would have increased.
Yes.
Do you know approximately how much?
I know with medical specialists, it was $26 a paycheck, and it went up to $75, if I'm not mistaken, $75, $80.
And I know we've been doing this as a matter of course. You said medical specialist. You said
I'm
with
sorry.
medical specialist. Did you mean with FCC?
FCC, I'm sorry.
I have nothing else. Thank you.
You good? Nothing? Thank you, man. You really stepped down. Are we done for the day? We'll reconvene, we'll adjourn, reconvene tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.